Well, it's a Friday, and it's time once again for a Radio Classics interview here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. I'm Roger Hoover, and this interview with Jake Coker is presented by Alabama One Credit Union. They've been voted Tuscaloosa's best credit union and best mortgage lender. Alabama One offers low-rate auto, mortgage, and business loans, plus protection for it all with Alabama One Insurance. You can visit any of their 9 local branches or check them out online at alabama1.org. Alabama One, a proud supporter of Crimson Tide Athletics, and today we're throwing it back to the 2016 college football playoff final. It was the 2015 season. Alabama would be crowned as the national champions, and the quarterback of that team joins me now, Jake Coker. Jake, roll tide, man. How's everything going?
Doing good. How you doing? Glad to be on.
Yeah, we're certainly glad to have you on, as we are going to be playing the game that we mentioned, the 2016 CFP final against Clemson on the radio all across the state of Alabama coming up tomorrow. But just does it feel like it's been about 5 years since that championship season for the Crimson Tide in your eyes?
It's been a long time ago. I don't know why, but time has flown. I've gotten married, got a daughter now, and so it feels like it was about 10 years ago that all went on. But still think about it. Crosses my mind at least once a day, and have a lot of good memories from that year.
Certainly a good season for the Crimson Tide, and for you, it had been kind of a long road to get to Alabama and then be in a spot to be the starting quarterback for a national championship team. Just what was that road like for you from when you graduated high school to eventually when you're out in Glendale celebrating with the trophy?
Oh, man, it was tough. It was really tough. A lot of highs, a lot of lows. My third year at Florida State, when things didn't work out, and I eventually had to have knee surgery. I had a lot of time to think, and growing up, I always want to play at Alabama, and really that's kind of when I focused in on my main goal. No matter what happens, my main goal in football is to win a national championship at Alabama. And so, I focused in on that and committed to Alabama. As soon as I transferred from Florida State, there was no other option for me as long as that opportunity was there. And, get to Alabama, things don't work out the first year, and really had to battle that second year to get that spot. And so, man, to be able to really to make that 1 year work, meant a lot to me. And like I said, it crosses my mind at least once a day, and it's something that I'll never forget.
And in that time, even in your time at Florida State, you got to be around some really good quarterbacks, even going back to your high school days with AJ. Just what did you learn from some of those guys? And then when you did get your opportunity to be on the field and be a regular starter, how'd that help you?
I was around a lot of good ones. EJ Manuel was the first quarterback that I was around, first starting quarterback, and he was drafted in the first round by the Bills. He's one of my favorite guys I've played with, really high character guy, and probably learned the most off the field as an 19-year-old, getting into college and just watching him, handle himself. And he was so mature and so respectful of everybody off the field. I learned a lot from him. He's somebody who I really have a lot of respect for. And then James was a year younger than me, and I tried to help him as much as I could, and I really learned, a lot of preparation things from him. And then when I got to Alabama, Blake Sims was, he was as good a guy as you could have been around. There's, in a situation like we were in, he was as gracious and as good a leader as he could have possibly been in that situation. And so really for me, what I learned the most was kind of, I guess, how to handle myself off the field, and really and how to manage relationships with your teammates, and how to be a leader. And I watched all those guys and learned a lot, and I had a lot of good guys to learn from, that's for sure.
And also a lot of good coaches to learn from. And you look at your Alabama time, of course, Coach Saban is the head coach, but what can you tell us about Coach Kiffin and how he helped you in your preparation?
He win a lot of games. He's an incredible mind. He really is almost like a football engineer. The way he comes up with plays and really allows them to translate from the chalkboard to the field is pretty unbelievable. And he was always able to set up big plays in different ways, and really impressive just thinking back on it.
And that Alabama team was able to bounce back after some early season adversity, and you win the SEC championship. You go and get ready for the Michigan State game. You ended up winning that game 38-0. How much confidence did that give you guys for the championship game against Clemson?
Oh man, that was that was big. There was a lot of and that game meant a lot to us. There was a lot of locker room material. I still remember those guys, a few one-liners, and I still don't know if they were all true or if some of them were just made up by Coach Cochran. But at least we thought they were real, and so we went out there with a chip on our shoulder, and it's not too hard to get fired up playing in Dallas either. So that was a lot of fun for us.
And then you get that big win. What was the preparation like getting ready for the Clemson Tigers?
The year before we went to New Orleans and lost to Ohio State, and so I think everybody came to Arizona, Dallas, Arizona with kind of a different mindset. I mean, when we got back to the hotel, nobody was doing anything. Everybody was in the hotel. We were hanging out in the team room, just there was no going out or hitting the towel or anything like that. I mean, the focus was there. I mean, everything was there, and we had one mission. And it obviously showed itself. We went out there and played really well in Dallas, and could have played a little bit better against Clemson. But luckily, I think we had a lot of veteran guys who knew how to win and pulled it out there at the end.
And you also had a pretty talented running back, a stable of running backs to hand the ball off to, but especially number 2, Derrick Henry, who ended up winning the Heisman Trophy. Just what kind of comfort was it for you as a quarterback knowing that when you handed him the ball, I mean, he was averaging, great yards per carry. How much of a comfort was it for you, especially in your first year as a starting quarterback?
Oh, yeah. I mean, whenever Derrick got the ball, there was very rarely were you going to have a negative play. And it seemed like towards the end of the game, he was just punishing people. I mean, almost to the point you'd feel bad for one of the guys trying to tackle him one-on-one. I mean, he was just punishing them. I mean, he was laying the wood, and I mean, just making them like it. And so, I mean, it was very comforting, to say the least.
Do you still like watching him play with the Titans now and seeing what he's able to do in the NFL?
Oh yeah. Well, my favorite thing is I thought people were idiots talking about how he wasn't going to be a good NFL back. They talked about how he wasn't going to be able to. He didn't have the agility to make plays out of the backfield. They'd catch him, and I always laughed at that. I thought they were crazy. And just like college, I mean, it translated to the NFL. He's bigger, faster, stronger than everybody out there, and he's making them look silly.
He certainly is. And another guy that's having some NFL success was one of your favorite targets against Clemson, O.J. Howard. A couple of big, long touchdown passes to him. What made him such a good target for you?
I mean, O.J. is a really high character guy. He knows where to be and how to play the game. And there's a lot of trust there with O.J. And not to mention he's 6'5". He looks like he doesn't even look human. He looks, if you create a player, a tight end, it would be him. So, I mean, really he had all the attributes of being a great player and probably should have caught the ball more that year. But, that year we had a lot of great players. I mean, a lot of people throw the ball too. But, hey, man, he's as good as they get.
And certainly Clemson gave you quite a ball game, and your counterpart, Deshaun Watson, had a really great game as well, led Clemson on a drive in the final moments to make it 45-40 before Alabama gets the onside kick and wins. Just when you were watching Deshaun play, what was kind of going through your mind seeing him put up a really good performance, even though it wasn't a losing effort?
That whole year we were playing, it seemed like every team we played at some point, they'd roll over and eventually you knew they were done. You could always tell they were done, and it just seemed like Clemson, no matter how many times we scored, no matter how many big plays we had, you just knew they were still going to fight. And so, I mean, even when we were up, I think was it 10 points at one time. Kenyon ran that kickoff back. I mean, I was still. We were all focused, and we knew we were still going to have to score to win that game, which we did. Clemson came back, scored after that, and then we had to go score again. So I mean, it was just relentless. I mean, that's one way I would describe Clemson, and that's a culture now. I mean, obviously now there's somewhat of a rivalry between Alabama and Clemson, and so I mean, it's the culture at Clemson, the culture at Alabama to not give up, and it was proven that game.
Is there any way to really describe that feeling of the confetti's falling? You're on the stage with Coach Saban, everybody else receiving that trophy, and that was also your final game as a Crimson Tide and as a football player. Just what did that all mean to you in that final moment?
No, man, it was, you couldn't end it any better way for me. Like I said, when I was at Florida State and I was hurt and I, kind of rehabbing, it's kind of a lonely time. You're just trying to get everything back on track, and the team's traveling to games and you're at home and watching everything. And so, I mean, when I just thinking, I wanted to win a national championship at Alabama so bad as a starter, for that to happen. And not only that, but I mean, when I was growing up in the yard, I was always, imagining being an Alabama quarterback winning a national championship. So, it was a lifelong dream and something I'll never forget. And I got to play with guys that I'll be lifelong friends with. And so, it means the world to me.
All right, Jake, last thing. What have you been up to since your playing days at the University of Alabama, and how much do you make it back to Tuscaloosa for games?
I usually try to make it up there once or twice a year. I got married, 2 years ago, or almost, it's about a year and a half, I guess now. But I've got a daughter, and so we're all wrapped up in her, and just spend as much time with her as we can, and taking advantage of that. So that's pretty much. I'm at Bancorp South. I'm on the commercial insurance side and down in Mobile, and so just trying to stay busy, run around, and spend as much time with my wife and daughter as I can.
Well, that certainly sounds good. Well, Jake, hopefully we'll be able to see you at Bryant-Denny Stadium coming up later this year. And just thank you for your time today with us on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Roll Tide, thank you for your time.
Oh, yeah. Thank you all for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, that was Jake Coker. We certainly appreciate him joining us for this Radio Classics interview. We'll have more quarantine Q&As coming up next week, as well as another Radio Classics interview coming up. But make sure you watch Alabama, Clemson. Listen to that broadcast, the Eli Gold broadcast coming up around the state tomorrow here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Thanks for watching, everyone.